I'm delighted to be joined by Sam as we're going to dive into all things shortening your sales cycle. I feel like that's a topic that you just can't ignore. Doesn't matter what company you are, even if you're flying, it's every sales leader, any revenue leader is thinking about that all the time. But hopefully today we're going to be thinking about it through a different lens, buyer-centric selling, which is a topic that we're personally super passionate about. I hope that everyone is going to learn a ton about today.
That'd be really awesome. I loved all of your questions in advance for those of you guys who have submitted them. We'll launch in a second with quick introductions and then go into it. But you guys had some really great questions. And I think that a lot of the things that we really want to tackle in sales comes down to the nuances. So there's all these things that we can say, like multi-thread and whatever, but it tends to be the really nitty gritty. So I love the questions that you guys submitted. Thank you for those of you who did that in advance.
Agreed. Yeah, we've got a good bunch lined up. And yeah, throughout, it's an AMA. It is ask us absolutely anything. So jump in. If you feel too nervous to come on camera, more than welcome to just put it in the chat and say that. But also, we're inviting everyone up on stage today. Cool. I think we can crack on. I feel like there's a good amount of people here. Yeah.
Let's crack on.
Super. Yeah. Welcome, everyone. We're going to dive into all things shortening your sales cycle with a buyer-centric mindset. And I'm Rory. I'm one of the co-founders here at Trumpet. I spent 7 years in the world of sales as an IC, as a leader, nerding out about all things sales, all things GTM. And I ended up at a company called Hotjar, which some of you might know. Very competitive space, incredible company, bootstrapped. We didn't have every feature. We sometimes found it difficult to compete. And that was where I focused on the buying journey and centralizing it into a single source of truth, a shared workspace. It was very manual when I was doing that with Google Drive and a few other tools. So had the idea for Trumpet, fast forward 3 years, Trumpet was born. So we are now helping revenue teams at companies like Gong and HubSpot build digital sales rooms, collaborative workspace to centralize their entire journey. Loving it, super proud of the team, and very excited to dive into all things buyer-centricity today. But Sam, I am going to do an awful job of introducing you. So I'd love to hand it over to you because you'll do a million times better than me.
Hi, you guys. Thanks, first of all, Rory and Charlotte, for having me. Really lovely to be here. I'm Sam McKenna. For those of you who don't know me, I'm based in the States, just outside Washington, D.C., and I'm the CEO of #Sam Sales Consulting. We're a consulting shop that does a couple of different things, but mostly top of the funnel sales training, help with all of your cadences to figure out what you should actually write when you message your buyers. And then we build brands for executives, celebrities, and founders alike on LinkedIn and manage their whole backend strategy. I've been in sales for what feels like quite a long time, 15, 16 years at this point, 7 years as an IC, then a leader, and then an executive leader, and then wrapped up my time in corporate when I was at LinkedIn, running LinkedIn Sales Navigator, broke my 13th sales record when I was there and thought, I wonder what I can do on my own, and took the very scary leap into entrepreneurship. And now we're an all-women team, which I say with great pride as we were coming on International Women's Day on Saturday. All-women team of almost 25.5 years in business and over 250 clients. So we've done okay. We're busy, send caffeine. We're having a great time. So thanks, guys, for having me.
Huge congrats. I can also admit to being a fanboy for many years following your content, which I'm sure you get all the time. But
First time I've heard it. First time I've heard it. Sorry.
All good, all good. But we're going to jump straight into it. Shortening sales cycles feels like a bit of a broad topic, but it is at the forefront of every sales leader's mind, I think, especially now more than ever. Why do you think that is?
So I think that so many of our deals are getting lost in decision, right? So people aren't making decision, they're staying status quo, they don't know what to do, they don't want to be the person that's going to be on the hook for making the wrong decision. So shortening the sales cycle, I think, is a big decision because our sales cycles are getting longer, because people don't know how to make decisions, or then ultimately they're going to indecision. I think something that's really important that we think about with how to shorten the sales cycle is the way we approach our sales conversations. So listen back to your own recordings, right? Or leaders, listen to that of your sales teams. And one of the things that I would tell you is, are we telling them what we do and how we can do all these things for them? Or are we really thinking about their challenges? Are we digging into what their issues are, business pain, why it matters, why there's urgency, who this matters to? If you focus on that in your discovery call, instead of saying, this is what we do, want to buy some, instead focus on, here's how we can solve your challenge. What you're going to find is you're going to find out so much more than probably your competitors, but you're going to be able to help those people make decisions and shorten your sales cycle just by doing that. I'll say one more thing on that point, and then Rory, I'll pass to you, but What we find that most of our buyers are struggling with right now is that they have 6 vendors that are all telling them the exact same thing of what they do. So now they're slammed with an unbelievable amount of information, and they're having to try to figure out how to resolve it themselves or make the right choice, which is why they just stick to status quo. So think of how you can be different by understanding more about your buyer, being consultative, and then being that one person they can turn to and say, we don't know what the hell to do. What should we do?
Agreed. You mentioned being overwhelmed, and I think Chris Orlob shared a stat a year or two ago. I think it was 2015. There was about 3 or 4,000 MarTech solutions, and about 2 years ago there were over 35,000. Charlotte from Trumpet here is our marketing lead. Anytime that we need a new tool, I think you're just inundated with analysis paralysis, as they say. Yeah, it's a hard decision to get right.
Definitely, that was the case. I used to sell for a company called On24, which is a webinar marketing platform, is what I think it became called at some point. But I think back then there was 5,000 solutions that you had to have to be successful in marketing. And so think about that for marketing, think about that for sales. Everything is a must-have. It's not, and we can only do so much. So what is it about you that's a need to have? What challenges are you solving? That's how you're going to shorten your sales cycle. We just listened to something the other day for one of our clients, and they have founders, and they gave a demo, a discovery call, and then a demo. And on that call, the people said, what we really want is when an inbound lead comes to our site, when somebody hits our site, we want to have different routing to the BDRs. And we also want the chatbot, right? Like a drift thing. We want the chatbot to be more human. And so what did our client do? Our client was like, oh, we can help you. And they demoed everything they can do. Here's how we can lead route. Here's how we can be more human. Here's how we can do that. And all I said was, why do they want that? Why is it important? What's it costing them? Let's monetize the pain. What's the cost of an action? What if it stays status quo? What happens then? If we don't know that, and if we just say, here's what we can do, we're going to probably lengthen our sales cycle or not get it going at all, because they're going to ghost us because we didn't actually solve their challenges. We said, we can do this. Want some of it?
Yeah, I think in sales, there's always that knee-jerk reaction. You hear a pain, and you're like, we can solve it. And let's just jump straight in that excitement because, yeah, you feel then it's a qualified opportunity. Not always the case.
And it's so easy because you are excited. You're like, yes, okay, thank God, qualified buyer. This is exactly what we want. Your challenge, what we can solve. So we want to go into it. But I would just pause. If you can change one thing about the way that you run your calls, just pause and say, we can absolutely help you with that. And I have a few things I can tell you and I can show you about it. Can you tell me why it's important? Why even spend time on this call today? What would that change if we could have a more human chatbot that talks to your buyers? Then what? Then we're finding out, right, the true pain, if there is one at all, or if we're just a nice to have in the end.
Absolutely. And given today's topic being around this buyer-centric approach, and you mentioned indecision, everything, something that we've seen and spent a lot of time studying is how buying behavior has changed, especially since the pandemic. Everyone has become time poor, context switching all the time. We're all remote. It's very difficult to get every buyer in the buying committee onto a call. And I think we're at a point where buyers arrive on that call knowing who you are, what you do, probably how you can help them. And like you're saying, it's our job just to drill into the why. Why now? Why are you here? Why have this conversation? Rather than here's what we can do. Because with your website and all of the information on the web, it's pretty easy to get up to speed on someone giving up their time to take 30 minutes out of that day for that discovery call. They don't want to know about your background, why you started, who you sell to, and everything like that. It's pretty different.
I think that's it too. Like when we get on calls, whenever it's time to do a demo, right? I think our slides start in the inverse of the way that they should actually go. So we do talk about that. Here's how we started. Here's the founder's vision. Here's what Rory dreamed about before starting Trumpet. That's great. And we do care about that. But then we go to the logos, right? So Todd Capone, if you follow him, talks about this as a NASCAR slide, your NASCAR slide of logos. And then we get to how we can solve your challenge. So no one's ever going to be like, wow, I really, Rory, and it's so cool that you work with one of our competitors. You don't really solve our challenge, but I love this, so I'm going to buy you. That's not going to happen. And if it does, they shouldn't have buying power. What they are going to do, though, is buy you because you can solve a challenge and then say, okay, but are you reputable? Who do you work with? Tell us about you. What was your vision? What can we expect from you? We have to solve the challenge first. When you dig into that, right, in this deck, when you present that slide, like, send all those first slides to the end. Get to why you matter for the client first. And I think, Rory, you made such a good point on changing your lens. I literally just posted about this on LinkedIn today. think some people struggle with sales. They struggle with the crutch of what to say on the discovery call, how to get in there. They feel salesy and grimy when they get on. But if you really think about it, just changing your lens that you're here to have a call to solve a challenge, not to sell a product, you'll end up digging in, asking active listening questions, understanding their pain, and then saying, we can help you. Or figuring out that they're not qualified for you, that they want something else, or they have $6 of budget, and then you can figure out why they only have $6 and how to get more. Or you can say, I understand you have $6. Here's the solution you want to go to instead. An amazing chance for you to help them prove that value, qualify, and save yourself the time on the deal too if it doesn't match up with what you need. And I think that you'll end up solving challenges more quickly and actually selling more deals more frequently if you just do that instead.
Agreed. I think that's why being curious is one of the most common traits that leadership are now looking for when they're hiring go-to-market talent. And okay, given current status quo and how most teams are operating, how would you recommend people change their mindset from selling to their buyers towards more enabling their buyers?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to that consultative approach. So some of you are on the call today and you sell transactional things, right? They're 21-day closes. We just need to ask a couple of questions and then that's really it, right? Or you're a commodity or you're really price focused. So my advice is going to be different for you there. But I'll give you an example for us. I mentioned earlier at Sam Sales that we sell LinkedIn executive branding. So we would take someone, let's say Rory, you, and we would say, we can help you build your brand on LinkedIn. And also we can manage your entire back-end strategy. So it's a new offering, right? And we have to educate you on the differences. And there's a lot of people who do what we do, a lot of ghostwriters, lots of AI, lots of that. So what I have to do is get on and just understand, what are you seeking? What are the challenges? And then educate you. If I have no problem with inbound, no problem with pipe, right? This is really the direction you should go. If this is an issue, if you're trying to grow this, if you're trying to show tangible ROI, you need to think about this. I want to make sure that I educate you based on what I know and also what I know on the competitive landscape. I'm going to mention Todd Caponi again because he talks about calling out your competitors in a positive way really early on, right? So we don't do this, but our competitor does this. So this is what you're interested in. This is their core competency. This is the direction you want to go. When we show up just to be that advisor, that consultant, take off the hat that you want to actually sell them and just advise, educate, enable, give them perspective, talk through the pitfalls of what is going to happen if they do this, but not that. Even sometimes we'll say to our clients, if you're going to just do one part and not both parts with us, don't waste your money with us. Go with somebody else because this second part's really important. So just even showcasing sometimes that we don't want your revenue if you're not going to do it the right way. That sounds a little aggressive, but can also turn on lights for buyers to say, oh, if you're going to forego revenue because we're not doing exactly as you suggest, maybe we should perk up. But again, just being that consultative and consultant and giving that angle of exactly how they should be thinking about things is the difference. Don't say what you do. Tell them why it's important and why it should matter to them.
Agreed. I think everyone needs to take a leaf out of your book on that front. So we're going to start moving over to some questions that have been submitted. And for everyone listening, please feel free to keep any questions coming in the chat as well. And the first one from the AMA is, and you mentioned this earlier, that some people on the call will be doing transactional sales, maybe a little bit more enterprise. And on the latter, tips for shortening sales cycles, selling into extremely conservative enterprises, such as law firms, which I believe you know a fair bit about, with huge buying committees.
So I think a couple of things. Actually, I'd love to know who submitted this question, because one of the things I loved about selling to law firms, for any of you who have law firms like the giants, not the two-person litigation companies or accident insurance companies, but when you sell to the big organizations, what I love about firms is that your buying circle is actually pretty small, but you have enterprise grade dollars with a smaller size decision committee. That's what I loved about it so much. Plus, it's also very tight circles. So once one person, you need to build a good reputation, everybody will hopefully know about you. Again, for better or worse there. Here's what I would say. So one of the key changes that you can make to shorten your sales cycle, especially for those larger enterprise deals across whatever vertical you're in, consider to think about this, who we approach in that buying circle when we do our outbound. So in that outbound, what we'll typically do is we reach out to the buyer persona that we're most familiar with or we most frequently talk to. So maybe that's a director of business development, maybe it's senior director or associate director of business development. But what I would encourage you to do is reach out to the CMO, reach out to the CBDO. What is the highest title that ultimately touches your deal at some point? Will the CRO or the CEO or the CTO need to meet with you at some point before signing your deal? Whatever that title is, go to them first. Why? Number one, practice our show me, you know me, right? If you're going to only send 10 to 50 sales emails, which probably just made everybody shudder, in a week, why not put the effort for the really important titles, right? The really senior titles. And those senior titles, by the way, are flooded with emails that just say all the same sales jargon. So if you practice our show me, you know me, you're basically going to send them a subject line that says something that makes absolutely no sense except to the person receiving it. Look at their LinkedIn profile, find their recent content, listen to a podcast they were on, read an article, pull a quote, write them a subject line that shows you did your homework. And then what you're going to have happen is maybe I reach out to Rory and I say, I would love to talk to you about how we can build your brand on LinkedIn. If I make the effort against everybody else who doesn't, he'll probably open my email, right? And then he's going to respond and he's going to say, thanks, so no thanks, we've got it covered. Or he's going to say, not my territory, please talk to Charlotte. So now I'm talking to Charlotte. I've multi-threaded in one swoop. I can say thank you. I can move Rory off. I can say, Rory, I'll continue to keep in touch, but thanks for the intro to Charlotte. And then I've been like, Charlotte, I'm going to continue talking to your boss. I've just said it here in the email, but I can't wait to meet with you. So now I can work all the angles at once, continue to educate Rory. I'm not going around Charlotte, and then work directly with Charlotte. What an easy way, it takes work, right? But what an easy way to shorten your sales cycle, because you're staying top of mind with all these people instead of just the one person that you might have engaged with and then had to work your way up to Rory, which was going to be infinitely harder.
Love that. Multi-threading from day one from an outreach perspective, which a lot of people just don't really appreciate. And if we double click there, so you're encouraging above the line selling.
Yeah.
Which, if we then think about the other side of it, a big talk of the town at the moment, above the line and then below the line. Speaking to maybe mid-level management, even end users to do that fact discovery so you can arrive with a point of view. Would love to hear your take on that and how that can accelerate conversations.
Absolutely. I'm going to tap in one of my previous peers at LinkedIn, a gentleman by the name of Andy Kellum. And when I was at a company called On24 that I referenced earlier, Andy was trying to sell LinkedIn Sales Navigator to our bosses. And our bosses were like, meh, don't need it. Andy came to me and he said, can I get some of your time? I want to understand what your sales process looks like. Little tiny baby AE. And I was like, you bet. I was so excited to be called as an individual contributor for my expertise. And so get on the phone with Andy and he says, I have a question for you. What is it that connects you and these 3 or 4 other people he names? And I said, we're all top performers. Like we all just came back from club, right? And he's, I know that's the case. And I was like, how do you know? And he's, because of the reports that we see in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, because you guys do these actions, that's why you're a top performer. And I was like, oh, so getting number one, finding those threads, validating his theory first, right? And then understanding, what do I need to say to your boss, to their boss, to his boss in order to get through? What are you trying to say? What are you advocating for? You're building those champions, not only getting that intel, but then building those champions at the lower level, right? That individual contributor level. So imagine when you walk into the conversation and you can say, I'm going to show you this report, right? And these 6 people who do all the things that your best should do. What ties these 6 people together? And then my boss is going to say, they're all top performers. And Andy's going to say, I know, because I talked to them already. I know. And here's what they're saying. Here's what they're advocating for. Here's the difference we can make. The more educated you are, the better off you're going to be in your sales cycle. And that goes back to show me, you know me, right? When you have that intel and you do the work, especially at the enterprise level, you're different than every other rep, right? Most of those reps don't do the effort. So think about how that can help educate you. And instead of just continuing to buy time with the Rorys of the world, right? We're going to work with the AEs, the BDRs on Rory's team. We're going to get as much as we can. And then we're going to show up with a hypothesis on how we can help in a different way.
Love that. And on the show me, you know me piece, we had a bit of back and forth on a post earlier around this, because this kind of multi-threading continues from that very first call and beyond. Arriving at a call, having an idea after that call, who else is probably going to be involved, is a really simple, very effective way to unlock those hidden stakeholders. And I think most people, I'm going to be a little bit rude here, are just a bit lazy. They just ask who else should be on the next call, rather than, hey, Sam, I can imagine that Paige and Charlotte would want to be in this conversation. Because typically when I help people go through this process and this journey, they get brought in because of X, Y, and Z reason. Do you think it's going to make sense if we give them that airtime on the next call, let's say next
Yeah.
Tuesday? So simple. But then instantly you're making them think, oh wow, they've done the research. They're speaking about my team. It's almost there's this subconscious trust that just suddenly happens in a click rather than I've got to do the thinking. I've never maybe bought this software before.
Yeah.
Who should be involved? I don't really know. I'm here because I need your help.
Yeah. I think consider this. So when you do that at the end of, if you can multi-thread from call one to call two to call three, you're doing your job. And I do think most reps are lazy and I'm lazy. That's why I go to the top with my show me you know me email because I only want to send 50, not 100 emails. But I think we also just need different scripts, right? Like you just said. So that's what I say because that's what I've been taught. So what's a better way to say it? Teach me something different to say. So first, we should look at not our first to second call as a failure if we don't do this, but the ultimate goal for that first call should be two things. You can say the challenge the buyer has is this, and this is why it matters. And the second thing is I've been able to multi-thread. We're doing what we call at Sam Sales, double the quantity or double the quality of who joins the next call. So if I talk to Charlotte, how do I get Charlotte plus her peer on the call? How do I get Charlotte plus Rory, right? Getting different titles and higher titles on the call. How do I double the quality or double the quantity of the people that join? By using the script that you just said, that's so great. I think the other thing that you can look at is saying something along the lines of, okay, here's what I like to do. I think there's so many places we can help you. I'd love to just build a bespoke demo just for you. Why don't we do this? I'll take you through that. And who else do you think would want to see this before you decide if we're the right fit for you? Or who else do you feel like these issues impact on the team? Do you have peers in other divisions, other teams, anybody else that reports to your boss that would have the same issues or want to be involved? When you say that, it's a little bit more buyer-centric. But I think the other thing is if you've done your job on the discovery call, if you've made a case for why you're important, if you're seemingly going to solve the challenge for the person that showed up, they're going to want to bring more people because they're going to need that advocacy in order for them to move this forward. Don't make the mistake either of thinking that just because you have a C-suite or a decision-making budget holding title, that you only need that one person, right? We're a very small company of 20 or so individuals, like I said, and I don't make decisions in a vacuum, right? I don't go and say, I decided to spend $5,000 on this tech, because if I did that page, our VP of marketing would say, oh, but hello, wait, like I could have used that money. What the hell is this that I'm now responsible for? So I'm going to bring in other people. So it's just a different way of framing the conversation. I'm going to say one other thing here. I think positioning and semantics, I talk about this all the time. Semantics matter, that hashtag, if you want to look at it. But positioning and semantics really matter. So if you can just change up the positioning of something of the way I said, or you just change up the words, use different language than what you hear all the time. As an example, when we close out emails, we don't say, do you have 20 to 30 minutes to chat this week? Or 15 to 20 minutes and then send you an invite for 30? Why the hell do we do that? Instead, we'll just say, let us know if you have some time to catch up over the next week or two, and I'll send a calendar invite accordingly. I'm a human being. I'm not writing from a script. I have a brain and I know how to use it, right? So slightly, but use that language, right? Be a little different because that can also matter. Your buyers are inundated with sales language. Be different.
The human side of selling. I think it's
Yeah.
making a much needed resurrection.
Yeah. Make a joke, be personable, have at it. And if you don't know how, ChatGPT is great for that. Doing a nice bait and switch on humor, even if you're not funny and you're working on it.
Yeah, highly encourage that. Cool. We're going to move on to the next question. I think this is quite an interesting one. I'd love to hear your take on it. Is how to get access to C-level when you're competing against the CEO, sorry, of a competitor. So it is a sales rep competing against a CEO.
Oh, I would still just go for it, right? Don't be intimidated by the title of your competition. And I think sometimes we can really get in our own heads about that, or the connections that people have internally, or let's say even the CEO that you're competing with, we know is best buddies, or we see them always commenting on somebody's profile, or we know used to work at the company and now spun out, and we're like, we don't have a shot in hell. We've won deals against our competitors who used to work for those exact same employers. You don't know the history, you don't know the back and forth, you don't know the capabilities, right? It's your sales prowess versus theirs. And sometimes the CEO, right, you might think, I don't have to work that hard. And the CEO, or CEO to CEO, or CEO to COO, we're fine. But don't let that intimidate you. Bring your A game and how rewarding it'll be if you do beat that person, especially being an individual contributor. The thing that you want to consider, right, at that high level, when you are trying to get after those C-suite titles, your effort matters. So one, the subject line is really important. It doesn't matter how good your email is. You could be offering $1 million in your email. If you can't get them to open up the email, you're going to be screwed. So make sure that subject line is compelling enough to open. Do your research. Second thing I'd say is in the email, you need to cut to the chase of specifically how you can solve a challenge for that buyer, especially at that C-suite title. But the other thing I would encourage you to do is to think about something we call at Sam Sales the hidden or forthcoming objection. Let me talk about that. For a lot of you who also follow a bunch of LinkedIn gurus and influencers, you've probably heard something like keep your emails super short. Needs to be under 50 words. Your subject line can't be longer than 2 or 3 words. Your email needs to be written like an F. And where the hell that came from, by the way. But consider that you are selling to a human being first and foremost, but you want to make sure that there's something that compels them to take a meeting with you. So if you simply say, hey, Rory, saw you guys are growing your presence on LinkedIn. We help executives do that, worth a chat. Consider that there's probably 4 or 5 other people who are saying that exact same thing. So how do we stand out? How do we make a difference? If I'm going to send an email that says, I noticed you're using LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I saw you post about it, and we can train your teams on how to do that. I'm a former exec there, and we train LinkedIn on how to use LinkedIn. Worth a chat. You might say, no, we have a CSM for that. Or you might say, wait, you train LinkedIn? We want to talk to you. But I need to think about what the objection is going to be. And the objection is probably, we have a customer success manager at LinkedIn. We don't need you. They'll train us and for free, score. So I need to think about what it is that's going to be different about what we do so I can get around that objection in the email. While you might already have a CSM at LinkedIn, here's something that we do differently. It's not a shot in hell that Rory is going to respond to me and 6 other people and say, no, thank you, we have this. He's just going to say, we have this, and then delete my email. So I have to get around that. And if I can get him to go, that's confused sideways dog face, which is hopefully what I'm getting all of our buyers to do. If I can get him to do that, he's probably going to reply and say, tell me more about this before I take a meeting. And I'll say, oh, thank God. And now I've got a shot. This is also a great place where video can come in, right? So imagine Rory gets this flat email from me, but I've intrigued him. And then I send a video. I'm like, I'm so glad you responded. Here's some thoughts. Here's what you want to think about. All of a sudden, those words come to life. He sees my personality for better or worse on video, right? And I can make a difference to hopefully reel him in. But consider that with the C-suite, get to the chase and make sure you get around the most common objection you hear they say.
Like that. Proactive objection handling.
Yeah, I already know you're going to say no, and here's why, but here's why you should still say yes. Worth the chat? No, still not? Okay, great.
Yeah. We actually encourage the team to do this on those first calls. If they haven't asked a couple of questions, maybe it's around competitors, maybe it's around a certain integration that we have. We say, most people actually ask this. You're probably thinking it, but we've already covered a lot today. And I want to just get that, be upfront about that. Invite the elephant into the room, whether it's pricing, whether it's competitors. If competition's a good thing. It means it's a real valuation. They're going to have to look at other people. And I think, yeah, absolutely love that tip of proactive objection handling.
Think about this too in every email you have back and forth, right? So I think this is something we often miss. We get an email back from a buyer and they say, hey, 2 questions came up, number 1 and number 2. We're so excited by the questions. Happy years go on. We think it's buying intent, right? We're all excited. And so we answer just those questions. But I would say answer question number 1 and then just say, what's the next usual question that comes up? What might be the next one they have or what might get brought up on the next call, and answer it. So you answer the question, you say, after we hear this question, we often also get this question. In case this is on your mind, I thought I'd proactively answer it. So that's one thing that you can do, right? Because if you get the buyer who says, that's exactly what I was going to say, that builds trust, right? That rapport is there. They think you're confident because you already know how they're thinking. I wanted to say just one more thing in terms of access to that C-suite title. You're seeing more than ever that people are posting content on LinkedIn. So these are executives that are like Rory and Sam. These are also executives that we write for at some of the most legacy, dusty companies around that you don't expect to even have content on LinkedIn. But check out one really interesting thing. Unless you're a LinkedIn influencer already, something happens with executives and you get a ton of likes on their posts and almost no comments. And those comments that they do get are either from Sam, or it's their internal people that are trying to be like, notice me, I'd like to be promoted at some point. But their comments are so far and few between that this is another way to get their attention and to multi-thread, quite frankly. So go in there, comment on their content if they are posting, and then guess what? If you are talking to the gatekeeping team and you don't want to go around, right? You're like, how the hell do I get their attention? Comment on their content and then send them a connection request after you've sent 2 or 3 comments and say, we've been working extensively with your team. I know we're one of 3 people that have made it down to XYZ in terms of decision making on what platform we're going to use. I just wanted to say hello, how lovely it's been working with them. If I can do anything to help, let me know. So it's not like you're sending them an email going around your buyers, but you're sending a thoughtful note, and then that person says, oh, that's so great. And then they talk to the team about you and say, Sam's the only one that reached out to me. Who else are we evaluating? None of them have reached out to me. Little things can really make a difference. It's not hard to stand out. You just have to do what others aren't willing to do.
I like that a lot. And
Stop yelling now.
Good. And that question that came in about, I'm a sales rep running a deal and I'm up against a CEO with the competitor. Do you think there's maybe a red flag there that this rep hasn't focused on exec alignment already and maybe thought, how do I bring in the right people on my side to, I guess, improve our positioning here?
It could be. I don't know if the person that asked that question wants to come live and expand further, but I will say that's one thing that I think when we think about multi-threading, we think multi-threading is myself to everybody at the buyer's angle. But multi-threading is really how you multi-thread on both sides of the table. So I'll give you just a great example. At LinkedIn, we sold a really just lovely deal to Merck. So some of you might know, and if you've been through procurement with Merck before, Godspeed, because what a process. So in those conversations, if we start having that conversation at the individual contributor level, and then maybe the frontline manager level, when it starts to build, that's multi-threading right there. But then we start to think about, okay, what's the process going to look like if and when you come on board? Who's your CSM going to be? What's implementation going to look like? Who's your account manager? This is an amazing opportunity for you to say, we're moving down the pipe here, right, in our sales cycle. I know we're still being considered against 1 or 2 other competitors, but I want you to get an idea of what life will be like here. Why don't we find a time where I can bring on our AM, our account management team, and maybe the leader as well, just talk through implementation, what that looks like, our SLAs for getting back to you. How does that sound? Multi-thread, multi-thread, multi-thread. Now this person's getting to know our whole team. They're getting to know leaders on the account management side. Some of you might be objecting right now as I say this and be like, there's not a shot in hell I can get that kind of attention for a deal that's not closed yet. And I'll tell you, if you escalate and the deal is worthy of that revenue, people are going to show up to the meeting. How do we multi-thread with legal? How do we multi-thread with procurement? How do we get that going early on? Because now these are all people who have irons in the fires for your deal, who have built relationships with your decision makers. If somebody goes quiet on you, we can poke a leader over here or a leader on this side and be like, can you send them a value add? Can you send them something about something personal that you guys talked about? And be like, how's their deal coming, by the way? And help me. I will say one more thing here. I think this is one of the most important lessons I learned when I was an individual contributor. It was the idea of not being what's called a lone wolf seller. I don't know if that's still a term we use, but I took immense pride in not needing anybody for my deals. So I would self-source them. I'd put them on the leaderboard. I would show up to my forecast calls all excited. My leaders would say, what do you need? And I'd be like, nothing, I'm amazing. And then what happened is that I was selling by myself. I wasn't getting that multi-threading. More importantly, selfishly for myself, I wasn't getting leadership on my side to see what I was like on calls. So not only when I started to multi-thread on my end with our deals on our executives, not only was I helping our deals advance because those relationships were building on both sides, but I got executive leaders, CSM, sales engineering, solutions engineering, our AMs to see what I was like on calls and then talk about me hopefully positively when I wasn't in the room. So that also advanced my efforts because I was showing how different I was as a seller on our team.
I made a bunch of notes there. Yeah, like multi-threading is a never-ending topic, which it should be as you know, in practice itself. But yeah, I learned a thing or two there, so I made a couple of notes. Just seen a question pop up. Will this webinar recording be available? I believe it will be. And we've also got a question from the audience. So we are going to, do we invite Joseph? Do you want to jump on?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's see Joseph. Yeah. Thanks for asking, Colleen. Hi, Joseph. Hi, double Joseph. triple Joseph?
So there's a couple Josephs, so I'm allowing them all to talk in case he wants to jump on. I'm not sure which one is the correct one.
We'll let you unmute in a couple of seconds and then move on. Okay, Joseph, if you want to unmute. Okay, cool. We'll move on. Paige, anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
I've got Joseph's question in the chat in the Q&A. So as a buyer, what channel would you prefer to see outreach from?
Oh.
Email, LinkedIn, phone, other. What have you seen work best?
Rory, what's your answer first so I don't stick my foot in my mouth?
I don't think there is one.
Yeah.
For me, I love when a rep has put in the effort to connect the dots. So they use email as a way to nurture. They don't just spam 10 emails in a week or two. They keep that almost as a drip feed. So I'm always top of mind. I always see them in the inbox. LinkedIn, I promise you, it is not hard to stand out. I think I get one voice note every 3 or 4 weeks. I get one video like for every 100 messages. People really do not take the time to just do those things. I tell you, like when I get a voice note or a video, maybe I don't watch it straight away, but if they follow up on LinkedIn, I'm probably going to give it a quick listen. LinkedIn caps it at 60 seconds, so it's not too much of a time sink. And as an exec, and I can also speak for other execs that even I cold call and in our network, we do answer the phone. But it is a holistic approach. It's not one, it's not the other. Everyone is so busy. It's different times. You're going to catch them at different moments. Like prospecting is difficult. It is a timing thing. It's a relevance thing. There's so much to it. Yeah, for me, it's a multi-channel, has to be approach. Not sure what you think.
Totally. So it is a multi-channel approach. And I think that everyone's different. So every time you get all this advice on best time of day to reach out, best time of method to do that, we're dealing with human beings who have completely different lives and preferences. So that multi-channel approach is great. I will say, here's some quick tips. This tends to anger a few people when I say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. I've never made a cold call in my life, and I never will. And I think to me, I'm originally from Switzerland. Manners are really important to me. And I think about a cold call where I'm like, let me just get this straight. I'm going to call Charlotte completely unannounced in the middle of her busy day so that I can sell her what I have. I would sooner die. And then everyone would say, no, but you're going to help Charlotte and you're doing her a favor by calling her. Thank God you came into her life. Maybe, but I can earn that meeting in a different way. So for me, it's not cold calls. I think there are lots of transactional deals where cold calls have to still be a thing, especially if you're selling to consumers. But I think other than that, like I'll quote one of my favorite movies, Crazy Stupid Love, and say, be better than the cold call, be better than the gap, be better than the cold call. And to me, I really look at it through email and LinkedIn and think about it from this approach. One, think about this note. Oh, by the way, Daniel asking about voice notes, it's only on mobile, not on desktop. So for the voice notes on LinkedIn, just take a look at that. Here's what I do in terms of our strategy of how to reach out to executives. So one, all of our emails, even if we draft them throughout the week, our show me emails go out on Thursday and Friday. We start there. Again, funky subject lines. If you send me an email that says speeding tickets plus Switzerland plus trumpet, and you're like, I think I know what trumpet is, like the instrument maybe, but I definitely know speeding tickets and I definitely know Switzerland. So let me open up this email and see what it's about. So one, send a funky subject line, makes no sense to anybody but the person receiving it. Two, in that email, right, go through the format that we talked about. What's the specific challenge you can solve, hidden or forthcoming objection, tie the dots, connect the dots together on that show me you know me. So you need to tell me what about Switzerland and speeding tickets as it relates to me based on the research you found, and then go in for the kill of asking for the meeting. When we will do email 2 is less than 48 hours after email 1. So great gong data that shows that if you send it less than 48 hours afterwards, you'll get a better response rate. Be a little bit careful here. We don't want to send it 24 hours. Wait 44, 42 hours, send it then. But what does that mean? It means that email is going to go out on Saturday or Sunday. So if I send it on Thursday, it goes out on Saturday. If I send it on Friday, it goes out on Sunday. And what's amazing is if you start to think about what an executive's life is like, right? Number one, we all work the weekends, right? I think HBR said we work an average of 7 hours, yay, on the weekends. Number two, we're doing all kinds of things that may relate to our kids, right? That doesn't mean that everybody's a parent, but we might be at our umpteenth soccer, hockey game, whatever, cricket game of the weekend, and we're bored and we're scrolling. So if a message pops in and we're not being hounded with other emails from work, we might take the time to respond, especially if you took the time to make that effort. In that second email, I would just tell you, have no new information. Use non-salesy language, but say something like, hey, Rory, wondering if my below message got read just yet. I would still be grateful for the chance to chat with you if you're up for the conversation. So really quick, and all I want to do is jog Rory's memory on my fantastic email that I sent on Thursday or Friday. And hopefully have him say, oh, that's right, I meant to get back to this gal, and then respond to me. Where the LinkedIn touch to me comes in as that multi-channel approach is the next touch point. So you might send email 3 next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then go on LinkedIn. Wait till early morning their time, or late night their time, or Saturday morning their time, and then Sunday evening when we're all preparing for the week ahead, and send them a connection request. Hey, Rory, my name might look familiar as I've sent you a few emails. I'd still be grateful for the chance to chat with you about how we can help you at Trumpet. If you're up for a chat, just let me know. So things where I stand out and say, psst, I sent you a few emails, go read them, they're really good, right? And make an effort. I'm tackling them at a different time of day than Monday at 9 a.m. where I get a ton of sales emails on Monday at 9 a.m. Why? Dear God. But look for different places. Work hard, works hard, but work smart too, right? Leave the office at 3 o'clock on a Friday, work 1 hour on the weekend. You'll find that just by changing things up a little, it works. I'll say this last thing. If you go on LinkedIn and look up a gal named Mallory Mudie, M-U-D-I-E. She's a sales rep on our team. If you didn't catch that name, just go to our company page and you'll find her. And she posted her playbook for how she got the head of an entire division of sales at Novartis to respond just by running that exact same play. She responded on a Saturday when she was online on LinkedIn and was like, here's my phone number, text me. And we're like, careful what you wish for. But yes, thank you so much for that. Just change it up a little, and I think you'll find a lot of success. Oh, last thing. Look at my post from yesterday on prospecting, and then some plays that you guys can run there, even to stand out in a totally different way with your closed lost opportunities and closed won. Lots of gold, hopefully, in there for you.
Absolutely. And I think a small tip there, which has pained me before, when I get an email from a rep and they're saying, hey, have you seen my previous email? And they've not replied to the thread. I'm not going to go and do the work and search, not to say I'm too busy and stuff, but just you have to make it easy. Replying to the same thread, it's so simple. But
frankly,
yeah.
I love to do that also, by the way, especially if this is my 19th email I'm sending to you, right? I want you to see I've been at this for a really long time. Give me some time. Do me a solid and just say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And going from prospecting to deal progression. So we've got a live deal happening, and thinking about that same problem, like when do you catch people at the right time? How can you engage them without just following up? And by the way, before I go into this quick talk track, please keep the questions coming for the last 15. We'd love to invite more of you up on stage and answer your top of mind questions. But anyway, thinking about deal progression, catching the execs at the right time.
Yeah.
We at Trumpet, we help revenue teams with deal rooms. So you're enabling your champion with this single source of truth. And as a brief story, we closed one of our biggest opportunities ever, which was amazing. Multi six-figure deal, multi-year, amazing for us. And the way that we did that was we noticed that the execs, 2 of them, CRO and someone else, kept logging in on a Sunday to the space. So just going in Sunday evening at that time, catching them in the moment, and then saying, hey, noticed you're here. Got any questions I can help with? They were super receptive to that, because in the week they're so busy, they're back to back. And just like you said, it's not saying we're trying to make it like reps work weekends or anything like that. But if you want to make life-changing money, if you want to progress, if you want to go the extra mile, you've got to be flexible and work around your buyer and make it easy for them. So I think, yeah, with that, it'd be interesting to hear when we talk about deal progression, how do you think about making it easy for your buyers to buy?
So I think as we work a sales cycle, I think one common thing that we see that misses is that we don't continue to nurture and educate during the sales cycle. The person says, we're going to present, we're going to this buying committee, I'm going to talk to our boss, we're going to go seek budget, whatever that might be. And we say, sounds great. And then we wait and hold our breath and hope for the best. Or all the check-ins that we do are then about us. Any update? Did you hear? Etc. So I think you can change the game in a couple of different ways. One, just make sure that you're continuing to educate without asking for anything in that email. I spoke at a sales kickoff for a massive data company based in Chicago a couple of years ago, and I met the chief operating officer, and I said, we should build brands for your exec, or chief communications officer. And I said, we should help build brands for your execs online. And she's, I've been thinking about this. And she's like, let's set up a call afterwards. And I was like, great. They've been our client for almost 3 years now. in that, right, we had our conversation. I pitched to her all my stuff. It was very expensive to begin with, right? So trying to get all this budget. But when we hung up, I just kept nurturing. And what I did by nurturing was I sent an email and said, here's a post I just wrote about that. Here's another post. Here's an article about how CEOs and C-suites are showing up on LinkedIn. Here's what the COO of BlackRock is doing with personal running videos on LinkedIn. Nurture, nurture, educate, right? And in that, she knows what I want. Shocker. She knows that I want a deal, that I want to progress, that I want to hear back, that I want an update. So I don't need to say, do you have 15 minutes to catch up this week? She knows what I want. So I think that's one thing. You have to educate. I think another thing, and Rory, I have no doubt that you guys are doing this at Trumpet, but using your executives' content as a way to nurture your buyers is fantastic, right? So if your execs, if your leaders, if your founders are posting, use those posts and use it as a way to nurture, because you're just saying, I'm trying to get you to buy in to what we're talking about, right? Whether it's personal and professional experiences, here's a great way to do that. The other thing I would say is text and personal emails on show me stuff can be great. So let's say I have a client that I have on text basis with, and how I get on text basis is there's a lot of cheesy ways that you can do that, but you can also say, you want to just send me a quick text so we have each other's phone numbers in case you ever need anything urgently. Not about me, it's about you. And I think some clients or some sales reps will say, I love to be on text spaces with my clients. Can we have phone numbers? Make it about them, not yourself. Positioning, semantics, etc. So then what you can do is just send a quick text. So maybe it's something funny. Maybe it's a post. You can say, I was just thinking about you today. This post is relevant to what we were talking about. Thought I'd send it your way. You can nurture via these multiple mediums and get ahead. I also think the work that we do to get to know our buyers personally also lets us continue to nurture and remind them that we exist. We'd like an answer with an update on a proposal, all without ever having to do that. So a client of ours that was moving from Chicago to Denver that I was waiting on an update for, I saw that like Denver's most expensive home ever, like $29 million or something got listed. And all I do is send the link to that article. And I'm like, I found your place. You've let the shopping, the house hunting end. I found your new home. That's it. Psst, don't forget I'm alive and I exist and I would really like an update on a proposal. Thanks, bye. All without ever having to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's the small things that just create that momentum, that continuous conversation. And in a world, we started this call saying how there was 5,000 MarTech tools 10 years ago. There's now 35,000 plus. The way to stand out as a vendor is to be human, because people do buy from people, especially I think now more than ever. And you mentioned there about tying in content from execs. And when we think about positioning the value drivers, the different pain to mid-level management, senior management, exec, that level of personalization in itself can be a way to accelerate conversations and sales cycles. How do you think people approach that? How do you unlock or uncover the pain from mid-management, senior, exec?
I think you can also go back to the clients you've already signed that look just like that. So you think this tip can impact your sales messaging, your value props, your so what, and the things that they care about and are top of mind. I also think ChatGPT, frankly, is fantastic for this. I think the ones that are going to win in the future are the ones who are using AI to make themselves smarter in a more efficient way, not to scale all their communications. So think about that, right? Drop the person's name in, especially if they're a public figure, or say, what would a CRO at a $2 million ARR company in this vertical care about right now? Do things like that and educate yourself, or take notes on what you hear. Listen to their podcasts, listen to their peers' podcasts, do your homework. I will tell you too, we talk a lot about segmentation of like when you're prospecting, segmenting your accounts, making sure you're going after the top tier ones. So pick 2 or 3 verticals that you're going to become experts in. One of mine was law firms. I saw an amazing opportunity, very low progress in terms of the footprint that we had. I think we had 3 firms at the time, and I turned that into 42, 43 in 2 years. I became an expert in what they cared about. I became an expert in the hurdles and challenges they have, what would get them fired if they didn't do it right. So I could come to the table, right, with some meaningful content. I know we have Jesse in the room with some questions. Do we want to let, maybe just one question. Do we want to let Jesse live?
Actually, she answered my question in the chat.
Oh, okay. Never, Dan, Jesse, we missed the chance to answer your question live, but that's all right. Thanks.
Have you got another question, Jesse?
Jesse's no, I just had one.
No, I'm a long time show me you know me, so let's go.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Thanks for joining. Cool. Rory, what about you? Like, where do you see reps hit the mark with you when they're educating you at your level, right? Versus the 2 or 3 or 4 skip levels below you level?
Yeah, I think it's putting themselves in the shoes of who we are, like given our stage, our size, who we sell to. And I think it's basically like talking our lingo. So talking about our world, our customers, and for me, that's personalization. It's not, oh, you went to X university and you support Manchester United and blah blah blah. Like execs are busy. Like sometimes you can catch them and it is relevant and it does turn their head. I think for outreach that makes sense, but I think to be honest, like especially when a deal is progressing and you're trying to multi-thread, maybe just stay on the CRO's radar, not asking for anything, just staying on our radar, keeping them in the loop, arriving with a point of view, making some assumptions and say, I think you're going to care about X, Y, and Z. I noticed that people in your team, like Sam, Charlotte, and Rory, that they're focused on X. Are they missing anything that you guys have been speaking about at your SKO, your RKO? Talking their talk with them, their team, their industry, their product, their customers. I think that's really important. People often miss out the opportunity to say, we're all on this call today. We're going to help you solve your pains, but like, how is this going to help you and your customers? And because that's who they serve. And if you put them in their shoes, that's what they're thinking about most of the time, especially at an exec level. Yeah, sometimes cutting to the chase, being relevant in that perspective is pretty powerful.
Using their language, I think, is a great point. So there's a gentleman by the name of Steve Goldberg, who used to be the chief revenue officer at SalesLoft, which many of you know as a platform. Yeah. So I was looking to see, I was just scrolling on LinkedIn one day. SalesLoft is a partner of ours. We've worked with them extensively on the partnership side, but never on the sales side. So I was like, maybe I'll just go in for the kill and see if I can get Steve to respond to me. So I looked at his post that he had written, and he said, basically actually talked about the lack of the art of personalization when there's sales outreach. But he said, if you want to get my attention, here's what I'm thinking about right now. I'm putting together this about pipeline. I'm thinking about little wins around this, and I'm thinking about this for a board presentation. In the comments, I also saw somebody that I know, Toby Carrington, who's the Chief Business Development Officer at Seismic. And Toby talked about the lack of personalization and how people are like, I see you're Australian. Do you want to do work with us? And Toby's, no, thank you for noticing where I'm from. And so in the subject line, I think I had written something like board presentation or pipeline, something. There was a quote that he'd written, plus Toby is Australian, plus hashtag Sam Sales. I got a meeting in 19 minutes, 19 minutes. Do your research, find their language. If they quote something, put it in quotes. I did the same thing with Ryan at LinkedIn, their CEO. He talked about little, what was it? Not moonshots, but little pilots, something like that. A tiny caption under his picture in an article that he wrote in the Financial Times, right? Use their language, do your research. And you might be like, everybody does that. How am I going to stand out? Nobody does that. It's so rare. Make an effort.
Absolutely. Piggybacking off that, especially on LinkedIn, when people post, sending that post either back to them and being like, hey, here's my thoughts on this, or sending it to their team. And you also on LinkedIn, another hidden gem is people don't realize you can see what posts they've liked, they've commented on, and then pulling that back to them, sending that screenshot and being like, you interacted with this post on sales velocity. I can imagine that's therefore top of mind because you're engaging with that conversation. Let's double click there. But
I have one more power move there. So if, let's say I was in Steve's post and there's another CRO that is equal caliber to Steve, size of company, thoughts, etc. Maybe just tagging in that CRO and being like, so on and so forth, Bill Johnson, exactly what we were just talking about the other day on our call with your team. So now Steve can be like, oh, Sam knows Bill Johnson. I know Bill Johnson. Wait, Bill, do you work with Sam? What's up? By the way, tagging people who like you and are having a good client experience, by the way, it should be said. Pretty obvious though. But look at what you can do there and then say, loved your post. I see you're connected to Bill. I tagged him in your post. Will you support his team? Wonder if we could help you in the same way. Show the caliber of people that you know and that buy from you also. Like that network is really important.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Great way to wrap up today. I wanted to say a huge thank you to Sam for joining us on this amazing session. I've made loads of notes. That's why I love doing these. And I hope everyone that spent the time today with us learned a ton as well.
That's it. What a pleasure to be here with you guys. Thanks so much. Thanks for your questions. Please say hello on LinkedIn to all of us if you haven't already. And thanks for your time today.